Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez stared at the cream-colored wedding invitation in her hands, the elegant script blurring as her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. The date was circled in red on her calendar, had been for 8 months now. Her little sister Emma's wedding day. The day she had promised to be there for, no matter what. But the envelope sitting next to the invitation on her small desk told a different story. Official military letterhead, deployment orders, classified mission briefing scheduled for 600 hours. The timing couldn't have been worse. Sarah's phone buzzed with another text from Emma. "Final dress fitting tomorrow. Can't wait for you to see it. Only 3 weeks until the big day." 3 weeks. Sarah would be halfway around the world in 3 weeks, doing something she couldn't talk about, in a place she couldn't name, for reasons that would remain classified long after she returned home. If she returned home. She pushed that thought away. Sarah Martinez didn't think like that. In her 5 years as a sniper with the 75th Ranger Regiment, she had learned to focus on the mission, on the shot, on coming home alive. But this time, coming home alive meant missing the most important day in her sister's life. The barracks around her hummed with the usual activity. Soldiers cleaning weapons, checking gear, writing letters home. Some of them were heading out on the same mission she was. None of them had a sister getting married in 3 weeks. Sarah picked up her phone and stared at Emma's contact information. Her thumb hovered over the call button for a long moment before she set the phone down again. How do you tell someone who has been planning their perfect day for 2 years that you won't be there? How do you explain that duty calls when it calls at the worst possible moment? The door to her room opened, and her bunkmate, Specialist Jenny Chen, walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee from the mess hall. Jenny had been Sarah's shooting partner for 2 years now, and she could read Sarah's moods better than anyone. "Rough news?" Jenny asked, setting one of the coffee cups down next to Sarah's elbow. Sarah held up the wedding invitation without saying anything. Jenny whistled low. 3 weeks out. That's brutal timing. "Emma's been planning this wedding since she was 12 years old," Sarah said, finally finding her voice. "She used to dress up our dog in a veil and make me walk down the hallway with her. Practicing for when she got married. I was supposed to be her maid of honor." "Was supposed to be?" Sarah picked up the deployment orders. "Classified mission. Duration unknown. No leave authorized until completion." Jenny sat down on her own bunk across from Sarah's. "Have you told her yet?" "How can I? This wedding is everything to her. She quit her job to plan it full-time. She's been sending me pictures of flowers and cake designs every day for months. She made me promise I'd be there to help her get ready, to fix her veil, to walk her down the aisle since Dad died." The weight of that last part hit Sarah like a physical blow. Their father had been killed in a car accident 2 years ago, just 6 months before Emma got engaged. Sarah had stepped into his role without hesitation, becoming the one Emma turned to for advice, for support, for the steady presence their father had always provided. "She doesn't have anyone else," Sarah continued. "Mom's been a mess since Dad died. Emma's been taking care of everyone except herself. This wedding is the first time in 2 years I've seen her truly happy about something." Jenny sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "What about talking to the captain? Explain the situation." Sarah shook her head. "You know how this works. The mission comes first. Always. Besides, this isn't just any mission. We're going in to extract a kidnapped diplomat's family. Kids involved. If we don't go, they die. And if you don't go to the wedding, your relationship with your sister might die." The blunt statement hung in the air between them. Sarah knew Jenny was right. Emma had always struggled with Sarah's military career. Not because she didn't support her sister, but because she didn't understand why Sarah had chosen a life that took her away from family so often. Emma worked as an elementary school teacher in their hometown of San Antonio, lived in a house 3 streets away from where they grew up, dated, and then got engaged to her high school sweetheart. She had built a life of stability and predictability, everything Sarah's life was not. "She'll understand," Sarah said, but even she didn't believe it. "Will she?" Sarah remembered the last time she had missed something important. Emma's birthday 2 years ago, right after their father's funeral. Sarah had been deployed then, too, and Emma had spent her birthday at their father's grave instead of celebrating. When Sarah finally called from overseas, Emma had answered but barely said 10 words before hanging up. It had taken months to repair that damage. "I have to call her," Sarah said, picking up her phone again. "Want me to leave you alone?" "No, stay. I might need someone to stop me from saying something stupid." Sarah dialed Emma's number. Her sister answered on the first ring like she always did when Sarah called. "Sarah, perfect timing. I just left the caterer's office and you won't believe what they're planning for the appetizers. They have these little—" Emma's voice bubbled with excitement, the way it always did when she talked about the wedding. "Emma, I need to tell you something." The change in Sarah's tone must have been obvious because Emma immediately went quiet. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's just, I got some news today." "Good news or bad news?" Sarah closed her eyes. "Depends on how you look at it, I guess. I got deployment orders." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Sarah wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Emma spoke, and her voice was very small and very careful. "When?" 2.5 weeks. Another long silence. "So you won't be here for the wedding?" It wasn't a question. Emma had been through this enough times to know how military deployments worked. Once the orders came down, there was no negotiating, no changing plans, no putting family first. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I tried to get leave, but this mission is classified, and they need everyone who was briefed on it. I can't even tell you where I'm going or when I'll be back." "I see." 2 words. Emma had always been efficient with her words when she was upset. The more hurt she was, the fewer words she used. 2 words meant Sarah was in serious trouble. "Emma, please talk to me. I know this is terrible timing, and I know I promised I'd be there, but this isn't something I can control. You know I would be there if I could." "Would you?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "Of course I would. This is your wedding day." "But you're not going to be." "Because I have orders. Because people's lives depend on this mission." "People's lives." Emma's voice had gone flat, the way it always did when she was trying not to cry. "What about my life, Sarah? What about the fact that this is the most important day of my life and you're choosing not to be here for it?" "I'm not choosing anything. This is my job. Your job that you chose. Your career that you chose. Your life that you chose, knowing it would mean missing things like this." Sarah felt her temper rising, the way it always did when Emma made her military service sound selfish. "This isn't about me, Emma. This is about saving innocent people who are going to die if my team and I don't do our job." "It's always about saving someone, isn't it? Always some mission that's more important than being here for your family." "That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you were home for something that mattered? Really home, not just passing through on leave." Sarah tried to think of an answer and realized she couldn't. Her last leave had been cut short by a training exercise. The leave before that, she had spent most of it sleeping off the exhaustion from her previous deployment. She hadn't been home for Christmas in 3 years. "I'm doing something important, Emma. I'm protecting people." "I know you are. I'm proud of you for that. I really am. But sometimes I wonder if you remember that I'm one of the people who needs protecting too. Not from terrorists or kidnappers, but from feeling like I don't matter to you." The words hit Sarah harder than any bullet ever had. "You do matter to me. You matter more than anything." "Then be here." "I can't." "You mean you won't?" "Emma, that's not—" I have to go, Sarah. I have a final dress fitting, and then I need to call everyone and explain why my maid of honor won't be at my wedding. Emma, wait. But the line had already gone dead. Sarah stared at her phone for a long moment, then set it down on her desk next to the wedding invitation. Jenny hadn't said a word during the conversation, but Sarah could feel her watching. That went well, Sarah said, trying for humor and failing completely. She'll come around, Jenny said. She's hurt right now, but she'll understand eventually. Will she? Because I'm starting to wonder if she's right. Maybe I am choosing this life over my family. You're choosing to save lives. That's not the same thing. Is it? Sarah picked up the wedding invitation again, running her fingers over the embossed lettering. Emma and David Mitchell request the pleasure of your company as they exchange vows. She was supposed to stand next to Emma during those vows, supposed to hold the bouquet during the ring exchange, supposed to give a speech at the reception about how proud she was of her little sister. Instead, she would be somewhere she couldn't name, doing something she couldn't talk about, with people who understood that duty came first, even when it broke your heart. You know what the worst part is? Sarah said. She's not wrong. I did choose this life. I enlisted right out of high school when I could have stayed home and gone to community college like she did. I volunteered for ranger training when I could have stayed in a regular unit. I keep re-enlisting when I could get out and come home. Why do you keep re-enlisting? Sarah had been asked that question before by family members and friends who didn't understand why anyone would choose military life. The standard answers were easy: patriotism, duty, honor, protecting freedom. All true, but not the whole truth. Because I'm good at this, she said finally. Really good. And when you're good at something that saves lives, it's hard to walk away from it just to make your personal life easier. But maybe being good at saving strangers doesn't mean much if you can't figure out how to save your relationship with your own sister. Jenny leaned forward. You want some advice? Do I have a choice? Not really. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to write Emma a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter. You're going to tell her everything you just told me about why you do this job and why it matters. But you're also going to tell her what she means to you and why missing her wedding is killing you inside. And then you're going to mail it to her before we deploy, so she gets it while you're gone. Give her time to read it and think about it without the pressure of having to respond right away. What if she doesn't forgive me? Jenny was quiet for a moment. What if she does? Sarah looked at the wedding invitation one more time, then pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. Writing letters home was something soldiers had been doing for centuries. Maybe it was time she learned how. She started writing. Dear Emma, there are things I need you to understand about why I do what I do, and why missing your wedding is the hardest thing I've ever had to face in my military career. Outside her window, the sun was setting over the base. In 3 weeks, it would be setting on Emma's wedding day, and Sarah would be watching it from somewhere on the other side of the world. But maybe if she could find the right words, Emma would understand that just because Sarah couldn't be there in person didn't mean she wouldn't be there in every way that really mattered. The letter grew longer as the night went on, filled with memories of growing up together, explanations of what military service meant to her, and promises about the future that Sarah hoped she could keep. By the time she finished, the sun was coming up, and she had written 12 pages of everything she had never been able to say out loud. She sealed the letter in an envelope and addressed it to Emma. Tomorrow she would mail it. In 2 weeks, she would be wheels up on a plane to a classified destination. And somewhere in between, maybe Emma would read those 12 pages and remember that being sisters meant understanding each other even when you didn't agree with each other's choices. Sarah folded the wedding invitation carefully and tucked it into her gear bag. She might not be able to attend Emma's wedding, but she would carry it with her wherever the mission took her. And maybe when she came home, there would still be a relationship to come home to. The helicopter's rotors beat a steady rhythm against the night sky as Sarah checked her rifle for the third time in 10 minutes. Beside her, Jenny was doing the same thing with her own weapon. Neither of them spoke. They had been in the air for 45 minutes, flying toward a compound in a country whose name appeared on no official reports. Sarah's watch showed 23:47 hours local time. Back home in San Antonio, it was early afternoon. Emma's wedding was tomorrow. The thought hit her like it had been hitting her for the past week, sharp and unexpected, even though she knew it was coming. While she was here, preparing to extract a diplomat's wife and 2 children from kidnappers who had already proven they were willing to kill hostages, Emma was probably getting her nails done or having a rehearsal dinner with David's family. 2 minutes out, the pilot announced through their headsets. Sarah forced herself to focus on the mission briefing they had received 6 hours ago. The compound was an old factory building, 3 stories, surrounded by a 12-foot concrete wall topped with razor wire. Intelligence suggested the hostages were being held on the 2nd floor, northwest corner. 3 kidnappers confirmed, possibly more. The diplomat, Ambassador Richardson, had been taken 3 weeks ago while touring a refugee camp. His wife and children had been grabbed from their hotel the same night. The kidnappers wanted $5 million and the release of political prisoners. The government's policy was simple: no negotiations. But they would extract the hostages if possible. Sarah's job was to provide overwatch from a building 400 meters away while the assault team went in. If any of the kidnappers tried to escape, if any threats emerged that the assault team couldn't handle, she would take the shot. She had made shots like that before. Long range, high stakes, someone's life hanging in the balance of her ability to put a bullet exactly where it needed to go. It was what she was trained for, what she was good at, what she told herself made missing Emma's wedding worthwhile. But as the helicopter began its descent toward the landing zone, Sarah found herself thinking about a different kind of shot altogether. The wedding photographer Emma had hired, a friend from college who specialized in outdoor ceremonies. Emma had shown Sarah hundreds of sample photos, pointing out the ones she liked best. "Look at this one, Sarah. See how the light hits the bride's dress during the ceremony? That's exactly what I want." 30 seconds, the pilot called out. Sarah pushed thoughts of wedding photography out of her mind and focused on the terrain below. The building she would be shooting from was a half-collapsed apartment complex, damaged in fighting 6 months ago, but structurally sound enough to support her position. She had studied satellite photos of it for hours, memorizing every window, every piece of debris, every sightline to the target compound. The helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust and rotor wash. Sarah and the rest of the team spilled out and immediately spread into their assigned formations. No one spoke. Hand signals only from this point on. The noise discipline that had been drilled into them through hundreds of hours of training took over. Sarah shouldered her gear bag and began the half-mile movement to her overwatch position. Behind her, the assault team was moving toward the compound along a different route. Everything had to be coordinated perfectly. Too early, and they would lose the element of surprise. Too late, and the hostages could be moved or killed. The apartment building was exactly as the satellite photos had shown it. Sarah made her way up 3 flights of damaged stairs, testing each step before putting her full weight on it. On the roof, she found the position she had marked during planning. A spot behind a low concrete wall that gave her a clear view of the compound while keeping her invisible to anyone below. She set up her rifle methodically, the same routine she had performed hundreds of times in training and dozens of times in real operations. Unfold the bipod, check the scope, range the target, account for wind speed and direction, settle into a comfortable shooting position. Through her scope, the compound looked different than it had in the satellite photos. More guards visible, for one thing. Intelligence had suggested 3 kidnappers, but Sarah could see at least 5 men moving around the courtyard. That would complicate things for the assault team. She keyed her radio once to signal that she was in position and had eyes on target. A few seconds later, she heard similar signals from the other team members. Everyone was ready. Now came the hardest part: waiting. Sarah had learned during her first deployment that waiting was 90% of military operations. You prepared intensively, moved carefully into position, and then you waited for the right moment, the right opportunity, the signal to execute. Sometimes you waited for minutes. Sometimes you waited for hours. Sometimes the right moment never came, and you went home without firing a shot. But this time, Sarah found the waiting almost unbearable, and not because of the mission. Through her scope, she watched one of the kidnappers pace back and forth near what intelligence believed was the building's main entrance. Young guy, maybe 25, carrying an AK-47 like he knew how to use it. Under different circumstances, he might have been a normal person living a normal life. Maybe he had a sister getting married tomorrow. Sarah shook her head to clear that thought. This wasn't the time for philosophical reflection on the humanity of the enemy. The man in her scope was holding innocent people prisoner, including 2 children under the age of 10. Whatever his story was, whatever had led him to this point, he had made his choice when he decided to hurt innocent people. Her radio crackled softly. "Overwatch, this is Assault Leader. We're seeing more guards than expected. Confirm your count." Sarah swept her scope across the compound again, carefully cataloging every figure she could see. "Assault Leader, I count 7 tangos visible, possible additional personnel inside the building." "Copy. We're adjusting approach accordingly. Stand by." More waiting. Sarah settled deeper into her shooting position and tried to keep her mind focused on the mission. But as the minutes ticked by, her thoughts kept drifting back to San Antonio. Emma would be at her apartment now, probably with their mother and David's mother, all of them fussing over last-minute details. The flowers would have been delivered to the church this afternoon. The cake was supposed to be delivered first thing in the morning. Emma had worried about that cake for weeks, afraid something would go wrong with the delivery, afraid it wouldn't look like the picture she had shown the baker. Sarah remembered the cake tasting Emma had insisted she attend during her last leave. They had spent 2 hours sampling different flavors and debating frosting options, and Emma had been so happy, so excited about every little decision. "What do you think, Sarah? The vanilla with raspberry filling or the chocolate with salted caramel? David likes the chocolate, but I think the vanilla is more elegant." "You should go with whatever makes you happy," Sarah had said. "It's your wedding." "But I want everyone else to be happy too, especially you. You're the most important person there besides David." The most important person there. And tomorrow, Emma would walk down the aisle without her. Sarah's radio crackled again. "All units, this is Assault Leader. We have movement on the 2nd floor, northwest corner. Possible hostage sighting." Sarah shifted her scope to the indicated window. For a few seconds, she saw nothing. Then briefly, a small face appeared at the window. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, with blonde hair and a dirty dress. One of the diplomat's daughters. The face disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, but it was enough to confirm the intelligence. The hostages were where they were supposed to be. The mission could proceed. "Confirmed," Sarah reported into her radio. "Child visible in target window. Approximate age 8 years. 8 years old. The same age Emma had been when their father started teaching them both to shoot targets in their backyard. Emma had never taken to it the way Sarah had. She was too tender-hearted, too bothered by the idea of hurting anything, even paper targets. But she had tried, because she wanted to spend time with their father and sister. "You're really good at this," Emma had told Sarah after watching her put 5 shots in a row through the bullseye of a target 30 yards away. "Better than me." "It's just practice," Sarah had said. "No, it's more than that. You have a gift for it. Dad says some people are natural shooters." It's not a gift if you don't use it to help people, their father had said, overhearing the conversation. Sarah's got a skill, but skills are only as good as what you do with them. Now, 15 years later, Sarah was using that skill to help get an 8-year-old girl home safely to her parents. It was exactly what her father had meant about using gifts to help people. So why did she feel like she was failing him by not being at Emma's wedding? All units, this is Assault Leader. Beginning approach in 30 seconds. Overwatch. Report any movement. Sarah pushed personal thoughts aside and focused completely on her scope. This was why she was here. This moment, when her skill and training could make the difference between innocent people living or dying. The assault team moved with the precision that came from months of training together. Sarah watched them advance on the compound, using cover and concealment to stay invisible until the last possible moment. Her job was to watch for threats they couldn't see, to be ready to take out anyone who tried to hurt them or the hostages. Breach, 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 came the call over the radio. Sarah heard the distant sound of explosives as the assault team blew the compound's main door. Immediately, the courtyard erupted in activity. Guards rushed toward the sound of the explosion, shouting commands she couldn't understand. One of the guards ran toward a side exit, clearly trying to escape rather than fight. Sarah tracked him with her scope. Finger on the trigger, but he wasn't threatening anyone. Let him run. Another guard appeared at a second-floor window, aiming a rifle down at the courtyard where the assault team was advancing. Sarah made the calculation in a fraction of a second. Distance, wind, target movement, background. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle's recoil was familiar, comfortable. Through her scope, she saw the guard drop away from the window. One threat eliminated. "Good shot, Overwatch," came the voice of the assault team leader. "Target down." More gunfire echoed from inside the building. Sarah continued to scan for threats, but the remaining guards seemed to be either surrendering or hiding rather than fighting. Within 10 minutes, it was over. Overwatch, this is Assault Leader. Package secured. All 3 hostages alive and uninjured. Preparing for extraction. Sarah felt the familiar surge of satisfaction that came with a successful mission. The diplomat's family was safe. The 8-year-old girl she had seen in the window would go home to her parents instead of becoming another casualty of international politics. But as she began to pack up her rifle, Sarah realized the satisfaction felt incomplete in a way it never had before. Yes, she had helped save innocent lives. Yes, her skills had made a difference when it mattered most. But back home, Emma was spending the night before her wedding without her maid of honor, without the sister who had promised to be there no matter what. The helicopter extraction went smoothly. Within an hour, Sarah was back at the forward operating base, cleaning her weapon and filing her after-action report. The mission was officially designated a complete success. 0 casualties among the assault team, all hostages recovered alive and uninjured, minimal collateral damage. As she completed the paperwork, Sarah checked her watch. It was now late afternoon in San Antonio. Emma's rehearsal dinner would be starting soon. David's family would be there, along with Emma's friends from college and the teachers she worked with. Emma would be nervous and excited, probably changing her mind about her hair for the 10th time that day. Their mother would be taking pictures of everything, the way she always did at family events. But there would be a gap in those pictures where Sarah should have been standing next to Emma, arm around her sister's shoulders, both of them laughing at some private joke the way they used to do when they were kids. Sarah finished her report and submitted it to the duty officer. The debriefing wasn't scheduled until tomorrow morning, which meant she had the rest of the night to think about what she couldn't change and what she had chosen instead. Jenny found her in the mess tent an hour later, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold while she wasn't paying attention. "Good work today," Jenny said, sitting down across from her. "That was a hell of a shot you made." "Thanks. You don't sound like someone who just helped save 3 innocent lives." Sarah looked up from her coffee. Do you think we make a difference, Jenny? Really? What do you mean? I mean, we saved that family today. That's 3 people who get to go home because we did our job. But there are millions of people in the world who need saving, and we can't help all of them. Meanwhile, there are people in our own families who need us, and we're never there for them. Jenny studied her for a moment. This is about your sister's wedding. This is about choices, about whether what we do here justifies what we don't do at home. Sarah, that family we saved today, that little girl we saw in the window, she's going to grow up because of what you did. She's going to have birthdays and Christmas mornings and school plays and maybe someday a wedding of her own. All because you were here instead of at your sister's wedding. I know that. I do. But what if I've been using the mission as an excuse to avoid the harder job of being a sister? Jenny was quiet for a long moment. What would your father say about that? Sarah thought about her father. About the conversations they had about duty and family and the balance between them. He'd say that serving others doesn't mean abandoning the people who love you, but he'd also say that sometimes serving others requires sacrificing things that matter to you personally. And he'd tell me to figure out how to do both because that's what adults do. They find a way to take care of everyone who depends on them. Sounds like your father was a smart man. He was. He was also home for every important day in our lives until the day he died. Maybe that's why Emma expects the same from me. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message. For a moment, she thought it might be Emma, but it was actually a message from their mother. Emma got your letter today. She read it 3 times. She's not ready to talk yet, but she wanted you to know that she loves you and she understands why you do what you do. The wedding is still tomorrow and she's still sad you won't be there, but she's proud of you for being who you are. Sarah stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was understanding, which was more than she had dared to hope for. Good news? Jenny asked. Maybe. I think my sister might not hate me as much as I thought she did. That's progress. Sarah finished her cold coffee and stood up. I'm going to try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Why? We don't have any missions scheduled. Because tomorrow is my sister's wedding day, and I'm going to spend all of it thinking about what I'm missing instead of what I've accomplished. As Sarah walked back to her quarters, she thought about Emma getting ready for bed in San Antonio, probably too excited and nervous to sleep much. In 12 hours, Emma would be walking down the aisle of St. Mary's Catholic Church, the same church where they had both been baptized, where their father's funeral had been held, where their grandparents had been married 60 years ago. Sarah wouldn't be there to adjust Emma's veil or hold her bouquet or give the speech she had been working on for months. But maybe, for the first time in their adult lives, Emma understood why. And maybe that understanding would be enough to rebuild the bridge that duty had forced Sarah to burn. Tomorrow would be Emma's perfect day, just without her sister standing beside her. And maybe, Sarah thought as she finally drifted off to sleep, that would have to be enough for both of them. Emma Martinez stood in front of the full-length mirror in the church's bridal preparation room, smoothing the skirt of her wedding dress for the 100th time. The dress was everything she had dreamed it would be. Ivory silk with delicate lace details, a chapel train that would photograph beautifully as she walked down the aisle, and her grandmother's pearl necklace completing the ensemble. You look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart, her mother said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Maria Martinez had been crying on and off all morning, alternating between tears of joy for Emma's happiness and tears of sadness for her husband, who wasn't there to see this day. Emma turned to look at her mother, who was elegant in navy blue, the dress they had picked out together 6 months ago. Do you think Dad would have liked David? Your father would have loved David because you love David. That's how fathers work with their daughters' choices. Emma nodded. But her eyes drifted to the empty chair in the corner of the room where Sarah should have been sitting, probably making jokes to keep everyone from getting too emotional. Instead, the chair held Emma's bouquet and a framed photo of their father that would walk with her down the aisle. "She's thinking about you right now," Maria said, following Emma's gaze. "Wherever Sarah is, whatever she's doing, she's thinking about this moment." Emma picked up Sarah's letter from the vanity table. She had read it so many times over the past week that she had memorized parts of it. Sarah had written about their childhood, about their father's lessons on duty and family, about what military service meant to her and why she couldn't abandon it even for the most important day in her sister's life. "I know she is," Emma said, "and I understand why she can't be here. I really do. It just doesn't make it hurt any less." A knock on the door interrupted them. David's mother, Patricia, peeked in. "Emma, dear, we need to start lining up. The ceremony begins in 15 minutes. Emma's stomach fluttered with nerves and excitement. This was it. The day she had been planning and dreaming about for 2 years was finally here. She picked up her bouquet, white roses and baby's breath, the same flowers her parents had carried at their wedding. The church was fuller than Emma had expected. David's large family filled the right side, while her smaller family and friends from work occupied the left. She could see her principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, in the third row, and several of her fellow teachers scattered throughout the church. David's college friends were there, along with his co-workers from the engineering firm. But as Emma looked out at the assembled guests from the church's narthex, she noticed something unusual. In the back rows, she spotted several people in military dress uniforms. She didn't recognize any of them, and she was certain she hadn't invited any military personnel, except for Sarah's friend Jenny, who shouldn't have been able to attend since she was deployed with Sarah. "Mom, do you know who those soldiers are?" Emma asked, nodding toward the back of the church. Maria squinted at the uniformed figures. "I have no idea. Maybe they're friends of David's family?" But David appeared at Emma's side, looking handsome in his black tuxedo, and he seemed just as puzzled. "Those aren't my friends," he said. "I thought they might be Sarah's colleagues." The wedding coordinator, Mrs. Stevens, hurried over with her clipboard and headset. "We're ready to begin, Emma. Everyone needs to take their places." Emma's mother kissed her cheek and walked to the front of the church to be seated in the first pew. David disappeared to take his place at the altar with his groomsmen. The bridesmaids, Emma's college roommates, and 2 of her fellow teachers lined up behind her. As the organist began playing the processional, Emma's mind was still on the mystery soldiers in the back rows. But then the music changed to Wagner's bridal chorus, and everything else faded away. This was her moment. She began the long walk down the aisle, her arm linked through David's father's arm. Mr. Mitchell had offered to walk her down the aisle when her own father couldn't, and she had gratefully accepted. He was a kind man who had welcomed her into his family from the moment David brought her home for dinner 3 years ago. As they walked, Emma was aware of everyone standing, of camera flashes, of David's radiant smile at the altar. But she was also intensely aware of Sarah's absence. The space where her maid of honor should have been standing felt like a physical hole in the ceremony. They reached the altar, and Mr. Mitchell kissed Emma's cheek before placing her hand in David's. The priest, Father Martinez, no relation despite the shared name, began the ceremony with a welcome to the gathered family and friends. "Dearly beloved," Father Martinez said, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Emma Maria Martinez and David Christopher Mitchell in holy matrimony." Emma tried to focus on the familiar words, on David's face, on the magnitude of the commitment they were making. But her eyes kept drifting to that empty space beside her where Sarah should have been. The priest continued with the traditional opening prayers and readings. David's cousin read from 1 Corinthians about love being patient and kind. Emma's friend Jessica read from the Gospel of John about greater love having no one than to lay down one's life for friends. That second reading hit Emma unexpectedly hard, laying down one's life for friends. Wasn't that exactly what Sarah was doing in her own way? Not dying for her friends, but sacrificing pieces of her personal life to serve something larger than herself? Emma, Father Martinez said, drawing her attention back to the ceremony. Do you take David to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do you part? I do, Emma said, her voice clear and strong, despite the emotions churning inside her. David repeated the same vows, his eyes never leaving hers. They exchanged rings, the simple gold bands they had chosen together, inscribed with their wedding date and the words, forever and always. By the power vested in me by the state of Texas and the Catholic Church, Father Martinez said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. David, you may kiss your bride. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise for their future together. The congregation erupted in applause and cheers. Emma and David turned to face their families and friends as husband and wife for the first time. That was when Emma saw her. Standing in the center aisle, halfway between the altar and the church doors, was Sarah. She was wearing her dress blues, the uniform Emma had only seen her in once before, at their father's funeral. Her hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, her medals and ribbons precisely aligned, her posture military straight. But what made Emma's breath catch wasn't the uniform or the surprise of seeing her sister when she should have been halfway around the world. It was the expression on Sarah's face. Sarah was crying, not the careful, controlled tears that military training usually demanded, but open, joyful tears that she wasn't trying to hide. Sarah? Emma whispered, barely believing what she was seeing. Sarah stepped forward, still crying, still smiling. I'm sorry I'm late, she said. My flight was delayed. Emma didn't remember moving, but suddenly she was running down the aisle, her wedding dress trailing behind her, and Sarah was meeting her halfway. They crashed into each other in a hug that was fierce and desperate and full of love. I thought you couldn't come, Emma sobbed into Sarah's shoulder. I thought the mission ended early, Sarah said, holding her sister tight. And my commanding officer decided that sometimes family duty is just as important as military duty. Emma pulled back to look at her sister's face. How are you here? How is this possible? Sarah smiled. And for the first time in months, it was a completely unguarded expression. It's a long story, but the short version is that I have the best military family anyone could ask for, and they made sure I didn't miss the most important day in my sister's life. The congregation was murmuring with curiosity and excitement. David approached them, grinning widely. So this is the famous Sarah, he said. I was starting to think Emma had made you up. Sarah laughed and extended her hand to David. Sorry for the dramatic entrance, and congratulations. You're getting an amazing woman. I know, David said, shaking her hand. And thank you for your service. Emma's told me so much about what you do. Father Martinez cleared his throat gently. Perhaps we should move the reunion to the reception. The photographer is eager to get some pictures. And we have another ceremony scheduled in 2 hours. As they walked back toward the altar for photos, Emma noticed that the mystery soldiers from the back rows were now standing, and she could see them more clearly. There was an older man with captain's bars, a woman about Sarah's age wearing sergeant stripes, and several others in various uniforms. Sarah, who are all these people? Emma asked. My unit, Sarah said. Well, part of it. The ones who could get leave on short notice. Captain Morrison, Sergeant Chen, Specialist Rodriguez, and a few others. They insisted on coming when they heard about your wedding. The photographer, a cheerful woman named Lisa, who had been photographing weddings for 15 years, took charge with professional efficiency. All right, everyone, let's get the immediate family photos first, then we'll move to the larger groups. As Lisa positioned them for photos, Emma kept glancing at Sarah, still not quite believing she was really there. I still don't understand how this happened. Your letter said the mission was classified, that you couldn't get leave. The mission was classified, Sarah said. But it ended 3 days ago instead of 3 weeks from now. When Captain Morrison found out about your wedding, he pulled some strings to get emergency leave approved for everyone who wanted to come. Turns out my unit considers you family, too. Captain Morrison, a distinguished-looking man in his early 40s, approached them during a break in the photography. Mrs. Mitchell, he said to Emma, it's an honor to meet you. Sarah talks about you constantly. You should know that your sister is one of the finest soldiers I've ever had the privilege of commanding. Emma felt tears threatening again. Thank you, Captain. And thank you for making it possible for her to be here. Sarah would have done the same for any of us, Captain Morrison said. In the military, we take care of our own. That includes making sure our people are there for the moments that matter most to their families. The photographer finished with the formal family photos and began gathering the wedding party for group shots. Sarah, still in her dress blues, looked slightly out of place among the bridesmaids in their soft pink dresses, but Emma insisted she be in every photo. You're my maid of honor, Emma said firmly when Sarah protested. I don't care if you're wearing a uniform instead of a bridesmaid dress. You're supposed to be in these pictures. As they posed for photos, Sergeant Chen approached. Emma recognized her from video calls Sarah had made from overseas. Emma, I wanted to tell you how beautiful your wedding is. Sarah has been talking about it for months. She was really upset about missing it, Emma said. She was devastated, Jenny confirmed. She's been beating herself up about it for weeks. That's why we all wanted to be here today. Sarah has saved our lives more than once overseas. The least we could do was help her save her relationship with her sister. Emma looked at Sarah, who was currently being positioned by the photographer next to David's groomsmen. Is that how she sees it? That she needed to save our relationship? Sarah thinks military service requires sacrificing personal relationships, Jenny said. She thinks she has to choose between being a good soldier and being a good sister. We wanted to show her that sometimes you can be both. The reception was held in the church's parish hall, decorated with white linens and centerpieces of roses and baby's breath that matched Emma's bouquet. The military personnel fit in seamlessly, charming Emma's teacher friends with stories about Sarah's marksmanship skills and impressive David's engineering colleagues with tales of the technical challenges of military logistics. During dinner, Captain Morrison stood to offer a toast. I wasn't planning to speak today, he said, but I wanted to say something about the young woman we all came here to honor. Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez is not just an exceptional soldier, she's an exceptional person. She leads by example. She never asks her team to do anything she wouldn't do herself, and she's saved more lives than I can count. He raised his glass towards Sarah, who looked embarrassed by the attention. But more than that, Sarah has taught all of us that being a good soldier doesn't mean abandoning the people you love. It means finding ways to serve your country and your family. Today, we're here to celebrate both Sarah's commitment to service and her commitment to her sister. The toast was followed by thunderous applause. Emma reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. I'm proud of you, she whispered, not just for what you do in the military, but for the kind of person you are. When it came time for the traditional maid of honor speech, Sarah stood nervously and looked out at the assembled guests. I had a speech prepared, she said, but I threw it away 5 minutes ago because everything I planned to say was wrong. She turned to look directly at Emma. Emma, I've spent your entire engagement trying to figure out how to be in 2 places at once, how to serve my country and be the sister you deserve. I convinced myself that I had to choose, that I couldn't do both. Sarah's voice caught slightly. What I learned this week is that being your sister doesn't mean I have to be physically present for every important moment. It means I have to love you enough to make the hard choices, and trust you enough to understand when I do. You've been understanding and patient with me for 5 years of deployments and missed holidays and last-minute cancellations. Today, you gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You forgave me for choosing duty over your wedding day. She raised her champagne glass. Emma and David, may your marriage be everything you've dreamed it would be. May you always choose love over fear, understanding over anger, and commitment over convenience. And Emma, thank you for teaching me that being a good soldier and being a good sister aren't mutually exclusive. They're both about showing up for the people who need you, even when it's hard. The speech brought tears to dozens of eyes, including Emma's. As Sarah sat down, Emma hugged her tightly. "That was perfect," she whispered. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing, cake-cutting, and conversations with guests. Emma danced her first dance with David to "At Last" by Etta James, the same song their parents had danced to at their wedding. Then she danced with Mr. Mitchell, who had walked her down the aisle, and finally with Captain Morrison, who insisted that as Sarah's commanding officer, he deserved a dance with the bride. But the dance that meant the most to Emma was the one she shared with Sarah near the end of the reception. The DJ played "Stand By You" by Rachel Platten, and the sisters swayed together on the dance floor, both of them crying happy tears. "I was so angry at you," Emma admitted as they danced. "Not just about missing the wedding, but about choosing a life that takes you away from home so much." "I know," Sarah said. "You had every right to be angry. But reading your letter helped me understand that you're not choosing military service over family. You're choosing to serve something bigger than yourself, and that's actually a beautiful thing. I just wish it didn't have to mean missing so many important moments." Sarah nodded. "I wish that too. But being here today, seeing how my military family showed up for me the same way I try to show up for them, I'm starting to think maybe there's a way to balance both lives better." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe I don't have to choose between being a soldier and being your sister. Maybe I just have to get better at being both." As the song ended, Emma kissed her sister's cheek. "I love you, Sarah. I'm proud of what you do, even when it's hard for me to understand." "I love you too, Emma. And I promise I'll be at every important moment I can be at from now on." The reception wound down around 11 o'clock. With guests gradually departing and the military personnel preparing to return to their hotels, Emma had changed into her going-away outfit, a simple blue dress perfect for the honeymoon flight that would take her and David to Hawaii the next morning. As she and David prepared to leave for their wedding night hotel stay, Emma pulled Sarah aside for one final conversation. "Thank you for being here," she said. "I know you moved heaven and earth to make this happen." "Actually, I didn't move anything," Sarah said. "My military family did that. They understood that sometimes serving your country means making sure your soldiers can serve their families too." Emma looked across the room at Captain Morrison and the other military personnel who were saying their goodbyes to various wedding guests. "They really are your family." "Aren't they?" "They are, and now they're yours too. Captain Morrison told me to invite you to the next unit barbecue. Apparently, you're an honorary member of the 75th Ranger Regiment now." Emma laughed. "I don't think I'm tough enough for that." "You're tough enough to love a soldier who's gone all the time and forgive her when she makes mistakes. That's tougher than anything we do in the military." David appeared at Emma's shoulder, car keys in hand. "Ready to go, Mrs. Mitchell?" "Mrs. Mitchell." Emma smiled at the sound of her new name. "Almost." She turned back to Sarah. "When do you have to report back?" "Monday morning, but I'll be stateside for at least the next 6 months. Training rotation." "Which means you'll be here for holidays." Which means I'll be here for holidays, Sarah confirmed. And anniversaries. And birthdays. And any other excuse you can think of to have a family dinner. Emma hugged her sister one more time, tightly. I'll hold you to that. As Emma and David drove away from the church, Emma reflected on how the day had unfolded. She had started the morning heartbroken that her sister wouldn't be there to share the most important day of her life. She was ending it with a deeper understanding of what family really meant. Sarah's military family had sacrificed their own time and comfort to make sure she could be at Emma's wedding. Emma's new extended family, David's relatives and friends, had welcomed both Sarah and her military colleagues with open arms. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Emma had learned that love wasn't about always being physically present for each other. Love was about understanding when someone had to choose duty over desire and supporting them through the consequences of that choice. Love was about showing up whenever possible and finding ways to be present even when you couldn't be there in person. Love was about building families, whether through blood or choice, that supported each other through everything life could throw at them. As they drove toward their hotel, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Thank you for the most perfect wedding day ever. Love you, Mrs. Mitchell." Emma typed back. "Thank you for being the most perfect sister ever. See you for Sunday dinner next week. Love you, Staff Sergeant Martinez." The wedding was over, but the family bonds that had been tested and strengthened throughout this experience would last forever. Emma was no longer just Sarah's little sister. She was a military spouse's sister-in-law, an honorary member of the 75th Ranger Regiment, and someone who understood that loving a soldier meant loving their entire extended family of choice. And sometimes, when everything aligned just right, duty and family could exist in the same place at the same time, creating moments of perfect joy that made all the sacrifices worthwhile.